morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, this is beyond disgusting. This is beyond despicable. Honestly, just when you thought the Democrats could not go any freaking lower, well, they did it again yesterday. And I want to be perfectly clear before I get to the actual story that it is no coincidence that this latest hoax, and it could be really the most revolting hoax of all of the hoaxes that they have perpetrated upon Trump and upon the American people. This was clearly done to distract and deflect from what took place late last night, early this morning, which is that the government shutdown is now officially over. The Senate passed the continuing resolution. The House then passed the funding bill. 6 Democrats crossed the aisle to join the Republicans, and President Trump officially signed it, 6, 7, 8 hours ago, basically late at night. So the government shutdown is now officially over. The Democrats have lost, and it was a rout. And it is now fracturing and breaking and splitting their party. There's no question. And so, to distract from their humiliating defeat, to distract from the fact of the pain that they deliberately inflicted upon the American people, 1 million federal employees going without a paycheck, using SNAP, food stamps, hunger as a weapon, over 20,000 flights canceled, putting the country through pain, suffering, misery, the damage they did to the economy, the damage they did to the country, all of it because Chuck you Schumer is petrified of a challenge, a primary challenge from Alexandria Fidel Castro Cortez and the radical left of his party, which demanded that he oppose Trump, wage a scorched earth campaign, no matter what, attack, shut the government down in order to fight Trump, even though Americans were held hostage for 43 days. So, to distract from this and the backlash and the blowback that is now taking place, yesterday, Democrats pulled a bait and switch. There's no other way to put it. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released several Jeffrey Epstein emails, in which, in one of them, listen to this, they were essentially insinuating that President Trump was obviously close friends, according to them, with the pedophile financier, with this pedophile, and that in one of these emails, that Epstein claims victim number 1 spent many hours at my house with him. And so it is an email whereby Epstein claims to Ghislaine Maxwell that I don't know why people aren't looking at Trump, because he was with, and then there's a name. It's the Democrats deliberately redacted the name and just called it victim 1. That this, that Trump had spent many hours at my house with this victim. Or this victim spent many hours at my house with Trump, to be more accurate. And so the insinuation was that Trump was at Epstein's house and that he was diddling underage girls. And that he engaged in inappropriate, illegal sexual abuse and sexual activity. That he was a sexual predator. Now, these emails, and there was about 3 of them, were deliberately, selectively leaked to the New York Times, and this is CNN, who then ran wild with it before the actual documents themselves were made public. And so that created a massive firestorm. Other media outlets followed. Of course, the moonbats on social media, especially Blue Sky, which is the left's version of Truth Social, they went wild with this. And before you know it, suddenly now, everybody was saying Trump was in bed with Epstein. Trump was at his house frequently. Trump is now caught red-handed, having spent hours and hours apparently alone with this so-called victim at Epstein's house. Wink, wink. He was sleeping with underage girls. Lies. Lies, damned lies, and more lies. So the Republicans and the White House, and I don't blame them, reacted with fire and fury. And they released, by the way, the Republicans then said, release all of the documents. 20,000 of them were released in possession of the House Oversight Committee. And then they started right away to point out the emails that the Democrats had put out, that these were cherry-picked and very selectively withheld the name of the victim. The name of the victim that the Democrats redacted was Virginia Giuff. She's this poor woman that ended up committing suicide earlier this year. She has now published, her family has published posthumously her memoir. She is one of the most prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who demanded that justice be done and that she and other victims of him and the pedophile network that he ran on his infamous Epstein Island, that they be held accountable for their sex crimes, rapes, and violations of these poor young underage girls. So you may say, well, okay, Jeff, so now we know the name of the so-called victim that the Democrats redacted, Virginia Giuff. Well, here's the problem. As she states in her memoir, as she stated under oath repeatedly, President Trump, her words, not mine, never did anything wrong with me, ever. He never acted inappropriately. He never touched me inappropriately. He never said anything inappropriately to me. In fact, she said all he ever was kind, generous, and friendly to me and my family. In other words, he was not part of this pedophile network. He never sexually abused Virginia Giuff. He never laid a finger on that poor woman. Virginia Giuff, at 16 years old, worked temporarily at Mar-a-Lago as in the spa, some kind of a spa masseuse. And so her father also worked at Mar-a-Lago as a maintenance manager. And she was briefly introduced to Trump. Trump said, great to have you. Please keep working hard. I hear great things about you. And then about a couple weeks later, she finally met Ghislaine Maxwell. And it was Ghislaine Maxwell who convinced her to leave Mar-a-Lago and become Epstein's full-time masseuse and to travel with them on his plane to his island and around the world. And that's where they abused this poor young girl and many like her. So the Democrats did everything in their power now to release 3 emails, selectively edited, selectively redacted, planted in the liberal media to falsely smear, villainize Trump as a pedophile and someone who abused this woman when they knew full well who she was and what she said under oath, what she told the Democrats, what she told Republicans, what she said in her memoir. So what they did was they released an email, in fact, 3 of them, knowing that they were lying, knowing that what they were insinuating was libelous. It was, to me, a smear. It was slanderous. And all of this to distract from the fact that Trump has broken them over the shutdown, and they are now being blamed. Look, I got to say this, my friends. What we're now seeing with the Epstein files has nothing to do with the Democrats or the media looking for truth or justice for these poor victims. They are trying to use the Epstein files desperately to go after Trump, to dirty Trump, to taint Trump, to try to rope him into the Epstein network so that they can discredit and delegitimize him as some kind of a sexual pervert, a deviant, or a pedophile. And if that means they have to lie, then be it, so be it. And that's what they were caught doing again. The same Democrats who had the Epstein files under Obama for 8 years, under Biden for 4 years. If there was anything in those Epstein files that in any way implicated Trump, they would have released it a long time ago. To me, this is beyond the pale. President Trump now, I think, needs to sue CNN, the New York Times, anybody involved in this, the liberal media, and I'm telling you the Democratic Party, the way he's suing the BBC. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. So 6:20 now on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Couple lines are open if you want to jump on. This is now their latest hoax. And it's beyond, as I said, it's beyond disgusting. Really, there's a certain point where you have to say enough is enough. And so they selectively leaked several emails, as I said in my opening monologue, that were written by Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Another one was this anti-Trump, really a journalist assassin, Michael Wolff, who's written several horrible books on Trump, most of them packed with lies. And so they released these emails. And in one of the emails, they deliberately redact the name of one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And they just refer to this person as the unnamed victim or victim number one. And they claim that this unnamed victim was with Trump in Epstein's house for many hours. And so, of course, the implication couldn't be clearer. That Trump was part of Epstein's pedophile network of powerful men who sexually preyed and abused young underage girls. And it was like, wink, wink. What's he doing? He was alone with her in the house, in Epstein's house. Oh, my God. We got him. We got him. And it created this media frenzy yesterday. I mean, again, trying to revive the Epstein scandal and make it seem as if Trump now is now directly involved. He was one of the men who was sleeping and having sex with underage girls. This is it now. Time to impeach. We're going to overthrow him. We've got a pedophile in the White House. Well, it turns out that the unnamed victim, the one they refused to name in the email that they released, but the Dems knew who she was, and of course the media knew who she was I kind of mispronounced her name. This is how the media has been pronouncing her name, but apparently in an interview, she gives the French pronunciation of her name. So out of respect for her and her family, it's Virginia is it Giuffre? Yeah, Giuffre. Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre. And so, Virginia Giuffre passed away, apparently committed suicide. Her family does not believe it. They believe that Epstein's people and people close to Epstein wanted to silence her and had her killed. In fact, months before her suicide, she was involved in a bus accident, and which looked very strange, almost as if somebody wanted to run her off the road. And she barely survived. And then she kept telling people, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. If something happens to me, she said, it's not suicide. Well, guess what? She ends up suiciding herself. So that's, ends up committing suicide. and her family is very suspicious. Frankly, I'm very suspicious. Most of the world is very suspicious. But let that go. She publishes a tell-all memoir. It's posthumously now published. And Virginia Giuffre says in the memoir, Trump never, ever touched me, never did anything inappropriate to me, never violated me. In fact, all he ever was, when I had that brief time I worked at Mar-a-Lago, he was very kind, he was very friendly, he was very considerate, he was extremely professional. She also said it under oath. So we know that she said repeatedly that Trump never did anything wrong. So why release these selective emails with the redaction deliberately in there? Because they wanted to smear Trump. Again, they wanted to create the false narrative that the president is a pedophile, that the president was a buddy of Jeffrey Epstein, which is another lie. He kicked Epstein out 20 years ago. He kicked him out because he kept plucking young girls. In fact, it's in one of these email exchanges. And Trump himself then later admits, he goes, look, this guy kept hitting on my young girls, and I said, stop. And the guy wouldn't stop, and I said, get the hell out. I don't want you and Ghislaine here. In fact, at one point, Trump blames Ghislaine Maxwell specifically, saying, you're going after young girls, you're grooming them, you're abusing them, it's wrong, it's sick, leave my people alone. So rather than being wink, wink, complicit with Epstein and his sick pedophile network, he kicked them out of Mar-a-Lago. He chased them out. He wanted nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with Epstein, nothing to do with Ghislaine Maxwell, nothing to do with Epstein Island. Now, this is very important. The 3 Democrats on the House Oversight Committee who deliberately leaked the selective and I believe false emails. There's no question now. These were edited emails. Were Congressman Garcia, who's the ranking member, but who's a rabid, Robert Garcia, who's a rabid anti-Trumper. Vice ranking member, Jasmine Crockett, that lunatic. And Ro Khanna, another left-wing crazy who has presidential ambitions in 2028. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, the White House, man, they gave it to the Democrats yesterday with both barrels. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, just blasted the Democrats for selectively leaking and obviously redacting key information from these Epstein emails. The media for running wild with it and pushing it, promoting it, knowing that it was a blatant lie and a smear and a slander. And look, apparently now, just to show you how it's blown up in their face, in one of these Epstein emails, Epstein, in fact, admits that Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. That, in fact, furthermore, he admits, this is to Michael Wolff, the anti-Trump, the Trump-hating journalist. He basically says he blamed Ghislaine Maxwell, saying, stop plucking these girls. I know what you're doing with these girls. You're not going to touch my girls. Get out. I don't want to see you or Jeffrey here again. So not only, does it not implicate Trump, quite au contraire, as the French would say. On the contrary, it completely exonerates Trump and utterly blows up the narrative that the Democrats and the media were trying to, craft and peddle to the American people. Now, I got to say this, and I want to start taking your calls. 617-266-6868 is the number. When is this going to end? I mean, there has to be consequences. This, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, I could go on and on. You can't keep lying and slandering and libeling and smearing someone knowing that it's a lie. When, we're getting now into pedophile territory. When you start, implying that the president of the United States is a freaking pedophile who was at Jeffrey Epstein's house diddling a 16-year-old girl, and it turns out to be a complete pack of lies. I mean, there's not a shred or a scintilla of truth to it. There's got to be consequences. You can't just hide under this shield of freedom of the press. Freedom of the press comes with tremendous responsibilities and duties and obligations. One of them is to be accurate, or at least attempt to be accurate. Attempt to be reporting what's factual and true. But when they're in the business now of making stuff up and deliberately, intentionally making stuff up in order to destroy and bring down a president, well, I'm sorry, there has to be consequences. Now, in other democracies around the world, they do have slander laws. They do have libel laws. And there are checks and balances on an irresponsible, lying, fake news media. And sometimes news organizations are fined, or they lose they get sued, and they have to cough up millions and millions, sometimes even tens and tens of millions of dollars. And that financial check and balance, that financial potential accountability, is what keeps them in many ways in check. The editor says to the journalist, is there any truth to this? Because if there isn't, we're going to get our pantsuit off. We're going to lose our shirt. So at least that provides a certain amount of restraint. Now, it's not just CNN and the New York Times. So let me ask all of you this. Should Trump sue CNN and the New York Times? I say yes. I think it's long overdue. Just like he's suing the BBC. And I'm going to get to them in just a second. But the Jasmine Crockett's, the Robert Garcias, the Ro Khannas, these are the three Democrats on the House Oversight Committee that deliberately leaked this garbage. And that they were the ones who redacted Virginia Giuffre's name to make it seem, oh my God, there was this victim. Oh, Trump was alone with her in the house for hours. What the hell went on over there? No. If they had revealed right away it was Virginia Giuffre, then everybody would have said, well, no, how many times is this woman going to testify? How many books is she going to write? How many times is she going to say that Trump never, ever, ever touched her inappropriately or did anything inappropriate to her or any of the other girls that she knew? And that's it. It would have been a non-story. It would have been nothing. But because they deliberately redacted the name, they thought, there it is. They've got their smoking bombshell. They've got him now. They've got him right where they want him. Now, the BBC, because laws in Britain are different than the laws in the United States. In Britain, you can actually really sue the media for slander and libel, unlike in this country. It's very hard. You can do it, but it's very hard. In England, it's easier. The BBC now is in the midst of a massive, massive scandal. Their top director has had to resign. The head of the news division has had to resign. It is a massive story across the pond in Great Britain. And it involves a documentary that the BBC pushed about January 6th. And they deliberately doctored the audio of Trump's infamous speech, January 6th, if you remember, when he told his supporters to go to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically let their voices be heard. In fact, he didn't call for violence. He called for the opposite of violence. But the BBC deliberately took those words out and then edited it to make it seem like he was telling them, go in there and storm the Capitol. Go there and riot. Roll cut 17, Mike.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell.
So, let me play it again, okay? Let me play it again. You want to see how deceptive and dishonest? I mean, this is straight propaganda. This is literally straight up propaganda. So, I want to play it again. This is what they're telling the people of Britain that Trump said on January 6th. Because the whole documentary is he's responsible. He lit the fire. He urged everybody to go. He told them to storm the Capitol. He told them to riot. That's the entire point of the BBC documentary. Well, they got a big problem. His speech. Well, that's okay. We'll just edit out the parts where Trump said, please be peaceful and be nonviolent. Let's just take that out. So here is exactly, again, what they said in their documentary. Listen very carefully. I got to say, it's very well done in terms of the editing, how they put it all together, the packaging. Roll cut 17, Mike.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell.
So, people in Britain are watching this and saying, that son of a, that SOB. How the hell did this guy win the election? This guy's a straight-up insurrectionist. Hell, he's a political arsonist. He's a political terrorist. Okay, here is what Trump actually said. Roll cut 17A, Mike.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
The whole fight like hell was later. And that's what he said, peacefully and patriotically. I mean, now, he's suing the BBC for $1 billion. $1 billion. I hope he wins. If he wins this suit, he bankrupts the BBC and takes out one of the leading fake news media organizations in the world. I mean, believe me, the fake news, the liberal media, this will be a blow they'll never recover from. If Trump can now take down the BBC. My question to you, should he do the exact same kind of lawsuit now? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, the Democrats thought this was going to be a major political scandal that they were going to drive against President Trump. It's now turning into a media scandal. And it is, you want to talk about blowback. This is very similar now to what is happening in Britain with the BBC. Two of their top leaders, in fact, their two top leaders at the BBC, have been forced to resign because they willfully, deliberately edited Trump's January 6th speech to make it look like he was calling for violence, rioting, and an insurrection. And so they doctored the tape. They literally doctored the tape that they were showing their viewers, first in a documentary and then in other news segments. And it has exposed the massive institutional bias, really institutional hatred for Trump at the BBC. Now they have a crisis of credibility. You now have something very similar taking place here in the United States. Yesterday, I mean, now look, we're going back to Russiagate. We're looking at the way they covered up for Joe Biden, the laptop from hell. I mean, the media has been lying to us over and over and over and over again. But the way they did it yesterday is on a level with the BBC. And so you have these selective leaks, a couple of Epstein emails by three prominent partisan rabid Democrats, anti-Trump Democrats, on the House Oversight Committee. And so they leaked it primarily to CNN and the New York Times, who then wrote up these big stories claiming that there was a bombshell email, that this was it, that it tied Trump to Epstein, and tied Trump in particular to sexually abusing one of Epstein's underage victims. And the name was deliberately redacted. It was withheld, an unnamed victim, and they went wild with it. And the moment CNN and the New York Times went crazy with it, MSNBC followed, NBC News, CBS News, ABC, the Associated Press. This thing was everywhere yesterday. Is the president a pedophile? That's basically the narrative that they were now pushing. And of course, it turns out that the so-called unnamed victim was Virginia Giuffre, who under oath and repeatedly said that Trump never did anything wrong, never even touched her. The Democrats knew this. The media knew this. They lied anyway. Now, my question to you, is it time now to pass, I don't care what you call it, a Media Accountability Act? An End Fake News Act, whatever it is. But should there now be a law? And I know there's the First Amendment. And of course, no one respects and reveres it more than Jeff Kuhner, than the Kuhner man. But being a so-called quote-unquote media outlet is not a license to lie. It's not supposed to give you a license to just make stuff up and to smear people and to slander people and to libel people and to destroy people. There has to be journalistic responsibility and accountability. I mean, really, what prevents the media? No, really, I'm serious. Donald Trump sleeps with pigs. Donald Trump visited a farm. Well, according to our sources, he was sleeping with a pig, or he had untoward relations with a goat. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disgusting or vulgar, but in other words, they can say anything knowing it's a lie. And what? No repercussions? No responsibilities? No consequences? I don't think so. And when you're caught, look, it's not a question of they make a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. When you make a mistake, you make a retraction. That's how they used to do it in the media. Now, there's no retraction. CNN's not retracting that story. The New York Times is not retracting that story because their goal and their mission, and they've openly said it, is to take down President Trump by any means necessary. So they're not media anymore. By their own admission, they're propaganda, as the Russians would say. They're propaganda. Well, since when is propaganda protected speech? Now, I want you to hear all of this, okay? You need to hear this. By the way, 617-266-6868 is the number. So, you've really got three players now in terms of Trump and this Epstein scandal. Because the media and the Democrats have been trying now for the last couple of years. Oh, my God, do they want to rope him in and tie him to Epstein and just tar him now as someone who participated in Epstein's sex crimes and in his sex trafficking network. So you've got Virginia Giuffre, who, as I said, in her book, under oath, Trump did nothing. Literally, he did nothing. Okay. Then you have Ghislaine Maxwell, who essentially was, I don't know how else to put this, was Jeffrey Epstein's pimp. She was the one that was the go-between between Epstein and his clients and the underage girls that they were targeting, abusing, and victimizing. She knows where all the bodies are buried. She even had an infamous black book. Now, she was asked repeatedly by investigators, by the FBI, by the DOJ. She was put under oath. And she said, according to her, that Trump did nothing wrong. She said, I'm telling you, he never had sex with any of these girls. He never touched these girls. He wasn't interested in these girls. There's no there. The guy was, as far as I know, he was a perfect gentleman. In fact, that's the word that she used. He was always a perfect gentleman. So, Ghislaine Maxwell says there's nothing to this. But then there's the third person. And that's Jeffrey Epstein's own lawyer, Alan Dershowitz. His own lawyer. And he has said repeatedly, and in fact, he just said it again. And this is, I'm quoting now, quote, I have all of the Epstein stuff, meaning I know I've seen the files. I've had access to the files, everything that's in the files. I've got it all. And there isn't anything. And I asked Epstein, this is now Dershowitz, when he was now remember, you're saying, well, Jeff, isn't he breaching lawyer-client confidentiality? Well, no, because that ends when you die. When someone, your client dies, you can talk. So Dershowitz is now talking. So he said, I have all of the Epstein stuff. There isn't anything. And I asked Epstein directly, while I was representing him, whether Donald Trump was involved in any kind of untoward activity. And Epstein said no. Dershowitz, I pressed him again and again. Jeffrey, if you have something, anything on Trump, now is the time to say it. Epstein told Dershowitz, I have nothing because there is nothing. Now, you've got the three principal players. Okay? The three key people. You've got the leading sex abuse victim. You've got the pimp, the madam, whatever you want to call her, Ghislaine Maxwell. And you've got Epstein's lawyer. And you've got Epstein in emails saying Trump did nothing wrong. Yet the media in this country, the anti-Trump, destroy fake news media, is so freaking corrupt. They are so reckless, so irresponsible, so dirty. They hate Trump so much. Honestly, they're so deranged. Again, propaganda. They don't even mention this. Like in the New York Times story, it's beyond disgusting. They don't even mention, but, full disclosure, Epstein's lawyer said, Epstein said there was nothing involving Trump. Ghislaine Maxwell repeatedly testified under oath, nothing involving Trump. Virginia Giuffre said nothing involving Trump. They don't even mention this. And so what they're trying to do, it's a death of 1,000 cuts. It's smear and keep smearing and just keep smearing and just keep lying and just keep tainting him and just keep throwing more mud and more mud and more mud and more mud. And then hoping that you just create this perception, this false narrative, like they did with Russia. He's an agent of Russia. He's an agent of Russia. He colluded with Putin. And it's like Goebbels, the big lie. You just keep repeating a lie often enough, people will begin to accept it as true. And they're trying to do it now again, because now they've got nothing. They just got destroyed in the shutdown. Their party is unraveling in front of our eyes. They're in the midst of a civil war. Pretty much AOC, I don't know if you saw the interview she gave yesterday, she pretty much now said she's primarying Chuck Schumer. By the way, she's now ahead in polls, if she was to primary him, 30 percentage points. You've got Zohran Mamdani, who now is doubling down on communism in New York City. By the way, it looks like Seattle now is going to elect their first ever socialist mayor, their first ever communist mayor. Her name is Katie Wilson. She's going to be the Mamdani of the West Coast. So what I'm saying is you now have the radicalization of the Democratic Party, the fracturing of the Democratic Party, all these recriminations against those Democrats that voted to open up the shutdown. To end the shutdown, to open up the government. Fetterman now, and I'm going to play this cut later, is saying, you wouldn't believe now the death threats I'm getting. The venom, the hatred. It's sickening. He says the radical left wants me dead. And they're telling me they want me dead. They want to do a Charlie Kirk on me. So this is what's going on in the Democratic Party. So to distract and deflect from all this, it's a bait and switch. Concoct some phony story about Trump and Epstein. And you distort and twist and edit these emails to make it seem like something is there, when if you just release the entire email, you would realize there's nothing there. Okay, one more, and then I promise I'm going to go to the phone lines. Okay? This is a crisis now in the media. I'm telling you, they're not going to bounce back from this. They're blowing themselves up. I don't know whether they know it or not. But when you make yourself the mouthpiece of a political party, then you're eventually going to be seen as the mouthpiece of a political party. And trust and credibility and objectivity and independence, that's all gone. And when trust and credibility are gone, you never get them back. Now, Tim Burchett, Tennessee Republican. I want you to listen now to this. The media and the Democrats have been screaming, banging the drums now for how many months? Release the Epstein files. Release all of the Epstein files. They're banging their fists on the table. Release the files. Release the files. Release the files. Release the files. They're going on. It's like a jihad. And, they never cared for Epstein before. In fact, under Obama, they covered it up. Under Biden, they covered it up, which begs the question. If you all cared so much about Epstein, why did you just bury it under Biden and under Obama? Because if they had anything, even a smidgen of evidence, that Trump did anything close to anything wrong with any underage girl or involving sex trafficking of any kind, my God, they would have released it the second they saw it. So, something is up. They're not really interested in justice. So, but they keep going on. Release the files, release the files, release the files. Here it is. Okay? You got to hear this. Trust me. Game, set, match, checkmate, whatever analogy you want to use. Congressman Tim Burchett brought a motion to bring the Epstein files to an immediate House floor vote. He said, okay, I'm calling your bluff. You guys want to see the Epstein file? Boom. So he brings a motion. He says, no, I got the floor. I'm calling now for a motion. Just release all of it. Unredacted. All of it. Every file under the sun. Everything. He says, all I need is unanimous consent. If we get, in other words, everybody has to agree to it. So if anyone voices, but if one person objects, then that's it. We can't move forward. So he goes to the Democrats. You give me unanimous consent, which is what you say you want. Boom. The Epstein files will be released in 5 minutes. All of it. All of it. Okay. Here is what Congressman Tim Burchett wrote. I just made a motion to bring it, meaning the vote on the Epstein files. I just made a motion to bring it straight to he swears here, to the floor, okay? I just made a motion to bring it straight to the floor. And they, meaning the Democrats, blocked it. They blocked it. I tried to do unanimous consent. I tried to get the Epstein files out, get it straight to the floor, to cut out all of this nonsense. And and the Democrats blocked it, oddly enough. Now, here they've had it for 4 years. And they obviously, if there was something there about Trump, they would have released it. This is politics. It has nothing to do with doing what's right, and it's Washington, D.C. to a T. And again, They ought to be ashamed of themselves, but they're probably not. In plain English, you want the Epstein files? Here it is on a silver platter. All I need is unanimous consent. That's it. So I get up on the House floor and I said, do I have unanimous consent? If nobody says anything, it's out. All you hear are Democrats saying, nay, nay, no, nay, no, nay, no. Meaning they blocked it. They don't want the Epstein files to really be out because they know there's no there when it comes to Trump. When it comes to the pedophile network, that's a different story. That's why I want the Epstein files out, because I want to know who went to Orgy Island. I want to know who victimized and preyed on these young girls. I want justice for these young women. But the Democrats don't care. That's why Burchett is sickened by this. You know, Burchett is saying, I want to get these powerful men as well. So let's get all the names out there and put their lives under a microscope, and let's see if the DOJ can start arresting some of them. But the Democrats don't care. The so-called party of women and women's rights and feminism. No, they just want to keep using this issue to smear Trump, to lie about Trump. This is all about trying to make Trump look bad. That's it. That's what this is all about. So, if anyone ever says to you, oh, the Epstein files, Trump is hiding it, the Republicans are trying to suppress it. No, the Democrats literally voted now to block the release of the entire Epstein files. They're liars and hypocrites to their core. 617. I'm sorry, it's beyond sickening that our media could be this corrupt, that the Democrats could be this freaking corrupt. Seriously. And that you don't give a damn about justice for these poor young women? That this is all just another sick tool, a sick way to try to politically damage Trump, and you know he's innocent on this? Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Trump should sue CNN, sue the New York Times, sue the Democratic Party, and Republicans now, if they had any spine, pass a law that makes it a crime for the media to lie. You lie and you deliberately engage in propaganda. It's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you big. Agree, disagree. Andrea in Rockport. Thanks for holding, Andrea, and welcome.
Jeff, they're very successful in their lives because the people who call your show, including your wife, still believe that Trump is a philanderer, that he cheated on all his wives, that he's not a man of integrity. Well, I'm sorry, he is a man of integrity. I watched him a lot. And he has been married 3 times. I have friends that have been married 3 times. But he never cheated on one wife. Every single one of his wives, the 2 wives before Melania, loved him, thought nothing of them. Trump himself did nothing but speak very highly of both of his wives. And a woman scorned, hell hath no fury for. A woman who's been cheated on is not going to, at least one of them is not going to love him back. So he's not a philanderer. Maybe he had an affair in between, but he really wasn't the type. He was too busy working. He's not the type to sit around with some young girl all day long. That's just not his style. He likes to work. He's always been like that. And he is a man of integrity. Savage told a wonderful story about how his mother went to a bakery in New York, and some guy jumped her, grabbed his purse, and ran. A guy in a brake truck ran after the guy, got the guy who stole the pocketbook and brought it back to him. Trump was so moved that he found out who the guy was. He gave him a reward, and he offered him a job. And the guy, it comes to find out that the guy...
Andrea, we're up against a hard break. Can you please hang on? I want you to finish your story. Okay, let's go right back to Andrea in Rockport. Andrea, you were saying that many, even Trump supporters, and you included Grace, my wife, have bought into the myth of Trump being a philanderer, a ladies' man who cheated on his wives. You're saying that's not true. You said, furthermore, He's a very good, honest, decent man with a lot of integrity. And then you were telling the story about a robbery. Can you please pick up where you left off, Andrea?
Yes, his mother was getting out of a cab and she was going into a bakery in New York City, and a man attacked her, threw it to the ground, and grabbed her purse.
So, Andrea, sorry, can you just get off speaker because we find it hard to hear you?
I didn't think I was on speaker.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Andrea.
His mother was thrown to the ground by some guy, and he grabbed her purse and he ran off. A man in a bread truck saw it, ran after the man, tackled him, and got the purse back and held him until the police came. Trump was so moved by this that he asked the man to come to see him, and he gave him a reward. No one knows how much money it was, but he also offered him a job. Come to find out, the man that attacked the woman was a white man, and this man that saved his mother was a black man. And don't forget, he was the first one in Florida in the 1980s to allow blacks and Jews in Mar-a-Lago, and everyone who owned country clubs around him was astonished and said, "Why are you doing that?" He's a very good man. There are many stories like this, and he's always, his whole life, tried to do what was right and what was honest. Why else could they do all this lawfare against him and throw everything at him and not find one little thing? They've invested his life more than anyone's ever been investigated. And again, he's not a cheater, he's not a philanderer, he respects children, just how he threw Epstein out. And the other thing is, everyone goes, "Oh, well, he was talking to that guy in the locker room." Well, that was locker room talk for women throw themselves at me just because I'm rich and famous. What's wrong? He's just mentioning it. That's all he did, and everyone goes on and on.
That's right. No, that infamous Billy Bush tape where, the grab him by the, grab him by the pee. He was like, that's how groupies are. He was just describing how groupies behave. Rock star groupies of celebrities. He was like, and he was saying like, they have no self-respect. Right? And that was the point he was making. But no, Andrea, look, I want to go back to your first point. And I understand, I hear you where you're coming from, but to me it's almost irrelevant. Whether Trump was a womanizer or not, first of all, when have the Democrats cared about womanizers? I mean, just look at Bill Clinton. They defended him to the hilt. Look at John F. Kennedy. They still defend him to the hilt. Look at Ted Kennedy. I mean, this guy had a girl. I mean, I remember in Washington, D.C., he always had a different girlfriend almost every day. The man was a notorious cheater, a notorious philanderer. Democrats didn't care. So, number one, whether Trump is a womanizer or not, what is clear is that he never abused or molested children. And that, to me, is the key issue. Look, I've never cheated on my wife. I'm telling you right now, I love my wife. I honor my wife. I cherish my wife. That's not my thing. I do not cheat on my wife. And I've never been disloyal to my wife, ever. I'm not saying this to be sanctimonious. I'm just saying, please understand where I'm coming from. But even if a person cheats on his wife, bad as it is, horrible as it is, it's among two consenting adults. And, if the wife forgives the husband, that's between them. So let's just assume the worst. Let's say Trump did cheat, say, on Melania, just as an example. Well, that's between him and Melania. And they have to work out their marriage the way they feel they need to work it out. If she's okay with it, or if she's forgiven him, it's no one else's business. So what I'm saying is, even if you're a womanizer or a cheater or a philanderer, if it's with adults, that's among consenting adults. What Epstein did was something much more depraved and evil, frankly unspeakable. He violated underage girls, many of them as young as 12 or 13 years old. And then he trafficked them to the most powerful people in the world. And many of these girls were held in sex dungeons for weeks and weeks, if not months at a time. Now, Donald Trump had nothing to do with that. In fact, as all the evidence is coming out, he thought it was sick. He thought it was gross. He thought it was immoral. He told them to stop. He kicked them out of Mar-a-Lago. He wanted nothing to do with them. He severed all relations with them. For the media and the Democrats to even try to insinuate, never mind lie, and smear that this man had anything to do with Epstein's grotesque crimes, like, I'm sorry. There's certain lines in a civilized society you don't cross. And this, to me, is one of them. And look, I know we've all gotten very jaded because we're so used to the fake news and the lies against Trump. But I'm telling you, he has the mother of all lawsuits here. He could break CNN. He could break the New York Times. By the way, he's going to break the BBC. The BBC is going to pay, maybe not $1 billion, but they're going to pay a lot of money. And I'm telling you right now, this should end Jasmine Crockett's career. This should end Ro Khanna's career. This should end Robert Garcia's career, that hater out in California. In other words, he's got to take this scandal now and wrap it right around the neck of the Democrats. Because we're talking now, this is out and out slander and libel. Honestly, maybe eating other people? Like, what is worse than what they're accusing him of now? Falsely. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, lines are jammed. I'm going to go to Mel in Saratoga, but they've now officially called it. It is now official. The socialist communist, she's an admirer of Mamdani, Katie Wilson, has now officially won the mayoral race for Seattle. She beat the establishment Democrat, the incumbent. Her policies are identical to Mamdani's. There is no difference. So another city has fallen to communism. So Seattle now is going to be joining New York City. And it's only going to get worse and worse and worse over the next couple of years. There is clearly now a Democrat civil war taking place. The socialists are winning. The establishment old guard is losing. And I think that's a major reason why they need to push this Epstein story in order to try to distract and divert people's attention from the disaster of the shutdown, from what the Democrats have done to the country, and now what the Democrats are doing to themselves. Agree, disagree. Mel in Saratoga in upstate New York. Thanks for holding, Mel, and welcome.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Mel.
Hi. Yes, I recall. Well, anyway, what gives the mainstream media the right to disseminate propaganda is a direct result of Barack Hussein, the undercover Muslim, Obama, who signed or reversed the Smith-Mundt Act.
That's right. He rescinded it. Yeah, you're dead on. The Smith-Mundt Act. He rescinded it, and it's been open season ever since.
Right, correct. But President Trump has got to reverse that with an executive order, but it has to be codified into law where this can never be used, and have some serious penalties for those who try to always lie, because lying is the tool of the Democrat Party, and the mainstream media is their foot soldiers. And, this can't go on. I mean, if you're going to report the news, you have to investigate and report the news with the truth. You can't report the news with lies that has an agenda a biased agenda that leans toward the enemy of the domestic enemy, which is the Democrat Party here in this country. So with that, I don't know. He's got to have that reversed and have it codified into law. That there's got to be heads have to roll and people have to be put away for a long, long time. That's what I wanted to just express with you, Jeff, this morning in the.
Oh, Mel, you're dead on. Look, as I like to say, you're not 100, you're 1,000% correct. And look, Mel, what I want to ask you, and I want to ask honestly everybody in this great audience, is being a member, I'm putting this in quotes now, the media, because I don't think we have a media anymore. I really don't. These are liars. They're shills for the Democrats. They're operatives. They're Democrat operatives masquerading as journalists. They're propagandists. Okay, they're paid liars. That's what they are. But, does being a member of the quote-unquote media, does that give you protection, the right to destroy someone, to deliberately malign someone, to deliberately lie about someone, to knowingly pass off information you know is false, just to attack and smear and destroy and demonize your political opponent, in this case, Donald J. Trump? In other words, yeah, of course I'm all for free speech, but, how do I say this? We have a standard of limits to free speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater if there's no fire. If there's no fire and you yell fire in a crowded theater, people get trampled, people get killed. So you're going to be held responsible. Well, I look at the media now, and look, that's why the legacy media is dying, because they just keep lying and lying and lying. Nobody believes them anymore. But, there they are every day. They don't stop. Now, Mel, if someone said you raped a woman, if they want to say Mel in Saratoga wants to run for office, and they go, ooh, we can't have Mel. Ooh, hey, a black conservative, black MAGA Trump supporter. No. This could be death for the Democratic Party. And they plant an obvious BS story and say, yeah, we got an unnamed source. And it's always anonymous sources. That's their shtick. Unnamed, anonymous. And they go, well, when I was 16, Mel raped me. And all of a sudden, you're defending allegations, of rape. And you're like, who, what? I never did anything to anybody. How does the media have the right to hide behind freedom of the press, and they're knowingly slandering you and lying about you? I'm sorry. I think we have to have libel laws in this country. I think it's time that the media is held fully accountable. And at a bare minimum, they should pay massive fines, financial penalties. Look, in some European countries, you can even go to jail. It's not a long stint in jail, but, 3 months, 6 months, a year. So is a deterrent. Journalists will say, hey, buddy, hey, I'm not paying a $2 million fine to lie. Hey, no, I'm not going to go to jail. But here, they lie with impunity because they know in the end they can get away with it. So my question to you is this, Mel, honestly, double-barreled question. Do you believe the liberal media at all? Do you have any faith or trust or confidence in them at all? And should they be given the license to say or write anything that they want, no matter how false or how defamatory it is? What say you, Mel?
Well, Jeff, I couldn't believe the liberal media as far as I could throw a grand piano, even if I saw the incident happen right in front of my eyes and they reported on it. And you took the words right out of my mouth. In European countries, you do go to jail if you're found to be lying and you manufactured these charges. You will go to jail, and you should go to jail for who you're accusing would have gotten if it were true that amount of time. You should have that placed thrust upon you right on top of your head that you go to jail for that amount of time. No, good behavior. No cutting the sentence short and this and that and the other. No, you go to jail, and that would, like you said, that would be a major deterrent toward these nut jobs, these lunatics that would do anything to slander, especially our president of the United States, Donald John Trump. You should have to go to jail, and you should have to go to jail for quite a long time.
I'm with you, Mel, all the way. I'm with you. Mel, as usual, thank you very much for that call. You're spot on. Let me ask all of you in the audience, do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you make? Has the media gotten even worse? I think they've gotten even worse. I thought they couldn't get worse after the whole Russiagate hoax and after what they did during COVID. And how they covered up for Biden and, the Biden laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop. I thought they couldn't get worse. I'm telling you, they've gotten worse. And so do you think it's time that they should be held accountable under the law? Should reporters, should media organizations be fined, financially punished, in some cases even sent to jail, or whatever, an editor or a journalist, if they knowingly spread, I'm not just talking false information, but openly defamatory information, do they have a license to slander and libel? I say no. Now, the only saving grace is that if you're a private citizen, in other words, you're not a public figure, you can sue the pants off of the media. And that's why if you notice, if you live in, if you're, say, just, I don't know, you're an accountant or whatever, you're an engineer or whatever, you work in a factory, they can't just print a story, hey, Joe Smith, sleeps with pigs. No. Then there's laws on the books and they'll go to jail or they'll be paying a massive fine. But it's public figures, politicians, people like me, conservative talk show hosts, celebrities, whatever. If you're a public figure in this country, it's almost impossible to win a lawsuit based on slander or libel. It's very, very difficult. And I think it's time that we pass a law that just because you're a public figure doesn't give the corrupt media in this country the right to just make stuff up. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, lines are on fire. Just very quick, because obviously we're talking about Epstein, the release of some of these Epstein emails, and how the Democrats have now been caught, and the media, red-handed, doctoring those emails, redacting those emails to paint a false narrative of Donald Trump. It is a huge media scandal that is now blowing up on CNN, the New York Times, frankly, much of the fake news media, and, of course, the Democrats. So, but just very quick, because you need to know this. So Seattle now is following New York City. They've elected a communist mayor, an avowed communist, Katie Wilson. Now, how did she win? She was behind, and then came a massive surge of mail-in ballots. Out of the blue, as they were counting, and this took place after Election Day, and they just kept counting. And shazam, all of a sudden, the mail-in ballots start going against the Democrat establishment hack, 10-1, 20-1, 30-1. And before you know it, she's surpassed him, and now she's the mayor. So what I'm saying is that the voter fraud and the election corruption that the Democrats have been using against Republicans, and especially Trump, they've now created a Frankenstein's monster. Because the radical left, the Marxist communist left, is now using that very fraud to dethrone and overthrow the old guard establishment. What comes around goes around. 617-266-6868. Okay, is it time now to pass a media accountability law? I say yes. What say you? Let's go to Bill in Sudbury. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Hi,
I got
Bill.
one question for you. How did they do it? How did the Democrats go back in time and insert Mr. Trump's name in the very first police report alleging Epstein's misconducts? How did they do it? That's 1996. Do you think the Democrats went back in time? That's where the giant conspiracy began?
Bill, please don't take this the wrong way, but it's like the ravings of a madman. I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Inserting what in 1996? I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
The very first legal accusation of Epstein. In 1996, the very first police report, the first one, Trump is named in it as a witness, as a person in the area when it was going on. How did the Democrats go back?
Okay, sorry. On what was going on?
This was. I don't think it was Virginia Giuffre. I think it was one of the older ones. That misconduct, sex trafficking in his New York penthouse in his New York law.
Okay, so, Bill, look, I'm going to try. I know, again, it's like the rock of Sisyphus. I know I'm pushing a rock up a hill and it's just going to go back down. But so what are you alleging? Are you alleging that Trump was abusing victims with Epstein as far back as 1996? Is that what you're alleging?
No, I'm alleging is he came out yesterday and said hoax, and you believed him unquestioningly. You're a gullible moron. That's what I'm alleging.
Oh, my God. Well, who said hoax?
The President of the United States. That's his magic get-out-of-jail-free card.
No, they released the unredacted email that showed that the victim, the unnamed victim, was Virginia Giuffre. Because she said under oath, Democrats released an email. Like, Bill, honestly, I'm being serious. Like, I don't know if you just can't quite process things, or you don't follow the news, or maybe it's time to go to a padded cell. I'm being serious. The Democrats released 3 emails. One of the emails deliberately redacted the name of Virginia Giuffre, where it said that this victim was with Trump in Epstein's house for several hours. The implication being that he was having sex or was intimate with this so-called sex abuse victim. It turned out that this redacted name turned out to be their so-called victim number 1 was Virginia Giuffre, who under oath and then in her memoirs said Trump never did anything wrong. The moment it was found out it was Virginia Giuffre, the scandal blew back right upon the Democrats and the media, because everybody knows she has repeatedly said Trump did nothing wrong. So whatever they were trying to insinuate was a lie. Now, just for the record, Ghislaine Maxwell said Trump did nothing wrong. Epstein's lawyer said Trump did nothing wrong. In fact, Epstein's own emails show, and he says Trump did nothing wrong. So, again, either you don't listen to the show, either you don't want to listen to the show, but let me just ask you point blank. Let's just cut through the muck. Are you claiming that Donald Trump sexually molested young girls? Yes or no?
No, I'm claiming that he is lying now about it. He's been lying about it for several years. He could have handled it differently.
Okay, I'm sorry, lying about what?
About not knowing him, not knowing anything about anything, he doesn't know anything. He does what you do. You say, I don't understand. All I ask you, Jeff, is how did the Democrats...
Oh, my God, Bill, jeez. I mean, buddy, do you ever hear yourself? I'm trying to be a human being to you. I said it in my opening monologue. Let me say it again. In Epstein's emails, and Trump is interviewed, and read today's Wall Street Journal. It's right there in their front page story. Trump said he was plucking my girls from the spa. And I told them, don't do that. I know what you guys are doing. Stay away from Mar-a-Lago. Stay away from my girls. Get out. And he kicked Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein out. Trump never said we had no idea what Epstein was doing. By 2005, 2006, of course, everybody knew what he was doing. Trump was the only one who cut ties with him. He kicked him out. So I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, what I find disgusting is, and I'm sorry, I have to say it, this is now after he is arrested and convicted for soliciting sex from a prostitute, an underage prostitute. Okay, it was a young girl. He pled guilty. This is now Epstein. You know who palled around with him? Bill Clinton. You know who palled around? This is after. I'm not talking 2006 when Trump gives him the boot. I'm talking 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Do you know who flew to Orgy Island? It was Clinton. You know who palled around with Epstein? Hillary Clinton. You know who else palled around with Epstein? Obama. You know who else palled around with him? Chuck Schumer. You want to know who else palled around with him? I could go on. George Stephanopoulos from the media. Heads leading people at CNN, leading people at MSNBC. So all of the top people in the media and the commanding heights of the Democratic Party. Epstein was one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. Your party took money from this guy after he admitted and pled guilty to soliciting sex from an underage prostitute. And your party, for 8 years under Obama, you laughed at people like me when I said there was a scandal with Epstein. You laughed. Under Biden, you laughed. And now you're calling me to say, he knew. He knew. He knew in 2005. He knew. Everybody knew. The difference is Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. Your people took money from him. And if you were half a man, Bill, because you called me many times and you laughed at me, you said the whole Epstein thing was a conspiracy, that I was a wingnut for pushing a conspiracy, that this was a pedophile network involving some of the most powerful people in the world. By the way, including Bill Gates, including many, many others who are top donors to the Democratic Party. And you called and said, Epstein is innocent. There's nothing to it. Now, just by the way, just like now suddenly Andrew Cuomo's a bad guy in your last call. But while during COVID, you said he should run for president of the United States. So you guys can't even keep your freaking story together. So I'm sorry, Bill. Epstein is a Democrat scandal. He was a Democrat. He was a Democrat donor. You guys knew about it. You guys partied with him. You took his money. You shielded him. You protected him. And by the way, who was the president that put Epstein away? Trump. When was he arrested? Under Trump. When did he commit suicide in his cell because he didn't want to face the music? It was under Trump. So you Democrats protected him every step of the way and said there was no story here. Until now, you think you can damage him politically by spreading lie after lie after lie. And that's the truth, and you know it. Now, I'm going to regret saying this. Go, Bill. What say you?
When did it become a hoax? When did it become a Democrat fever dream? Because he went around the country talking about Epstein while he was running for president. So when did he do his U-turn for, oh no, it has nothing to do with me now. Now it has something to do with everybody else. And by the way, if you rely on one person for the truth and assume everybody else is lying to you, you are begging to be lied to. Okay? You think it's a hoax because he told you it was a hoax.
Bill, listen to me. I want you to get mental help. I'm telling you. Okay, let me say it to you one more time. Virginia Giuffre, not Trump, Virginia Giuffre said Trump did nothing wrong. Register that in your brain. Ghislaine Maxwell said Trump did nothing wrong. Ever. Ever. Not just to Virginia Giuffre, to any one of the sex abuse victims. Register that in your brain. That's two people. Alan Dershowitz, Jeffrey Epstein's own lawyer, said Trump did nothing wrong. Epstein told him repeatedly he did nothing wrong. Put that in your brain. You just said 2 minutes ago, I asked you point blank, do you think he had sex with underage girls? You said no. So I don't know what else to tell you, dude. Now, I don't know what your problem is. I know what it is. You have Trump derangement syndrome. You sound like a wild animal. You foam at the mouth and you make no sense. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you the truth. And now he hangs up because he has nothing left to say. And now, the hoax is that they're trying to claim, this is the hoax, that Donald Trump was engaged in a sex trafficking network. That's a lie. Just like you claimed that he was colluding with Russia. That was a lie. That Trump engaged in inappropriate sexual activity with underage girls, that he was molesting or having sex with underage girls. That's a lie. And he just hangs up because his world can't handle it. Now, what I just want to say is this. What you hear from Bill in Sudbury, the rabidness, the fanaticism, frankly, the stupidity, the emotional, irrational desire to destroy Trump, get Trump at any cost. Literally, people like him ran the country under Biden for 4 years. That is the mind of a Marxist, communist, totalitarian fanatic. And when you confront a fanatic with the facts, with the truth, with evidence, they can't handle it. They hang up. They go crazy. I don't know what Mike is saying, whether he was shrieking but he just hung up. He's like, ah! They can't handle it. But these people are very dangerous because people like Bill, and you know this, all of you know this, have called for me to be murdered, have called for you to be murdered, he's called us Nazis, white supremacists. We need to be put in camps. We need to be put in jail. We need to be killed. We need to be murdered. We need to be eliminated. And these are the kinds of people now that form the base of the Democratic Party. It's people like him that are now powering Mamdani and AOC and Bernie Sanders to power. Truth means nothing to them. What they want is lies, lies, and more lies in order to destroy Trump. And I'm telling you, it's very frightening. You're dealing now with the mind of a fanatic. Frankly, of somebody who's psychologically and in some ways morally broken. 617-266-6868. Dan in Needham. Dan, you're the luckiest man in the world today. Because no matter what you say, when you come on after Bill in Sudbury, you're going to sound like the second coming of Albert Einstein. So, Dan, thanks for holding and welcome. Or should I call you Albert? Go ahead, Dan. Dan is not there. Okay. All right, let's go to Julie, or should I call you Albert? Julie in Tewksbury. Thanks for holding, Julie, and welcome.
Oh, I'm so glad you just took me. That guy, I want to talk about James O'Keefe. I don't understand why he is not more famous, more mainstream. Maybe because he's terrifying to people. I don't know, because besides you, I think he's literally the only honest investigative reporter that you can find anywhere, because he doesn't work for anybody, works for himself. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. If you go on his Instagram, James O'Keefe, and you go down about 20 stories deep, says right on there in blue letters, the truth about Epstein. He interviews, always like undercover interviews. This guy, his name was George Prager, I think his name is, and he is a member of the DOJ that was in charge of investigating all of this stuff. And he flat out says in the undercover interview, Donald Trump has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing whatsoever. They know that, but that the reason the stuff is being suppressed is because of the Clintons. Because Clinton was on the plane when girls were being raped, and he knew about it. Trump was not. He was on the plane, but just for travel or whatever. He was never on the plane for anything nefarious. And that it's the Clintons and the Obamas and other powerful Democrat people that are the reason why this is being suppressed. And there's no reason not to believe this guy, because he's an undercover interview. Like, he doesn't even realize he's being recorded and interviewed. and he's part of the DOJ that investigated it. So, Bill, you can just go on the internet and you can watch this video yourself.
No, but he doesn't. The point is, look, he doesn't want the truth. This is so hard for Americans to understand because totalitarianism, communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, is so foreign to us, to you, to me, to MAGA, to the heartland. But you're dealing with a Marxist, you're dealing with a communist, you're dealing with somebody who believes and wants to serve the party. Remember, Bill is a godless man. His religion is the Democratic Party. His God is the Democratic Party. So literally, it's like arguing with an Islamist. There's no point. I mean, in a sense, I guess after a while, there's just no point. And, that's what Bill is. So it's not reason, it's not logic, it's not going online. He's not interested. He knows that Trump is innocent. He even said it. When you press him, well, did he have sex with underage girls? No. So what are we talking about? So, no. What this is, Julie, listen, trust me when I tell you this. When Epstein is convicted, okay, he pleads guilty, having sex, soliciting sex and having sex with a prostitute who's underage. And there were many more. They just got him on one. They give him a sweetheart deal. He goes to jail, but it's basically a halfway house. Okay, long story short. So he serves his short sentence. This was in Florida. He comes back to New York at his mansion, and he throws a huge party, a welcome back Jeffrey Epstein party. Now, the names that were at the party, now remember, they all knew he pled guilty. He was an admitted sexual predator. He's an admitted, someone who preyed on underage girls. He's an admitted pedophile. Who's who of CNN was there? MSNBC, ABC News, led by George Stephanopoulos. Top people at CBS. Top people at NBC. Top people at the New York Times. Top people at the Washington Post. Almost every prominent Democrat you can think of was in the room, including Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton molested underage girls at Epstein Island. He molested them. Hillary Clinton knew that Bubba was molesting underage girls. She helped set up the girls for him to molest. That's why the Democrats don't want the Epstein files to be completely released. That's why they're just playing games. Because many of these globalists are sick pedophiles who traffic in children and young girls. And Epstein was at the heart of this scandal. And that's one of the few things I disagree with Trump on. Release all of the files, all of it. Because I'm telling you, it is going to wipe out the political establishment. And it's going to wipe out many of the corporate titans, the globalists, that fund this establishment. So, no, the Democrats don't want the truth. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, let me ask you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. What do you think is the bigger scandal? A, Democrat attempts to smear Trump with Epstein. B, the BBC editing fraud of Trump's January 6th speech. What do you think is the bigger scandal? Because remember, the BBC editing fraud scandal is Trump is now suing them for $1 billion. It has led to the top two people at the BBC being fired. And really now the BBC is in absolute turmoil. I mean, it's now piece after piece, article after article, exposing the institutional bias and anti-Trump hatred that pervades all of its coverage. I mean, the BBC has taken a massive blow over the last, 4 or 5 days since the scandal erupted. This one is just fresh. It's yesterday. But let me ask you again. What do you think is the bigger scandal? A, Democrat attempts to smear Trump with Epstein. B, BBC, the fraudulent edit of Trump's January 6th speech. I'll be honest with you. Both are disgustingly egregious. They're outrageous. They should lead to pretty much everybody being fired who pushed this story. But one said he caused a riot or called for a riot and called for an attack on the Capitol. That's essentially what the BBC was accusing Trump by doctoring his speech and taking out the words that he said to make it seem like he said the very opposite of what he actually did say. But what they did yesterday was they insinuated that Trump is a pedophile who molested underage girls. Now, to me, outside of having sex with goats, like sex with animals, cannibalism maybe, I don't know what's worse than that. So if I was voting, but again, it's up to you, Kuhner Country, obviously, because I don't vote, you vote, I would go with A. I think it's actually worse than the BBC media scandal. But that's me. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X, and I'm always very active on X. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in National ER. Jack in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Jack, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure, Jack.
You are a saint, my man. After listening to Bill from Sudbury, you've got the patience of a saint. I mean, the guy really had a problem there. But basically what I'm calling about is that I think there should be some accountability definitely for the media. Just as an example of something, I tried to reach out to some source to get some truth, some unbiased news. So I reached out to SAN, and I thought they would be really good, but I just removed them from my phone last night because it appears that each and every story that has anything to do with Trump is like they're smearing him. And it's so frustrating to me, and I'm going to say this. The journalists of today could definitely take a lesson from Walter Cronkite and Huntley Brinkley report. Those are the journalists that I grew up with, and I could be wrong, but it seems as though they just put the news out there, and they didn't, smear. There was no dishonesty. There was no lack of integrity. It was good journalism. Now, I don't know. I could be wrong with that, but that's what I grew up with, and that's what I'd like to see today. But I think there needs to be accountability because it's just so sad. And the one more thing I want to add, there was a gentleman on the Internet that got a special tour in the White House, and I guess there's a room that Trump only allows certain people to visit. And this guy was so full of positive excitement. He was told he cannot define to the public anything that he saw. But he said if the people could see what this room was and what was there, would definitely have an impact on the negativity of this man who's our commander-in-chief, who I love, my wife and I love dearly. I don't care what anybody says. I think action speaks louder than words, and Donald Trump is a man of integrity, of honor. He's a good man. I got his book, by the way, his magazine of his testimony growing up. A lot of people don't know this stuff that I read. So I just want to share that, Jeff. I love Trump, and it's just terrible what the mainstream media and the Democrats are doing to try to smear this man. So,
well, they're lying. Like, what we have to understand is what's changed in the media, and I'm not glamorizing the media of the past. Cronkite, for example, was a liberal, but he tried to be a fair, objective journalist. That's the point. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I just got this text message from Sandy about our poll question. And again, the poll question sponsored by the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. What's worse? Okay, what scandal is worse? A, the Democrat attempts to smear Trump with Epstein. B, the massive now scandal, the fallout from the BBC being caught deliberately editing words that Trump said at his famous January 6th speech. They just edited them out. So to make it seem like that Trump was actually calling for everyone to storm the Capitol. And as I said, top people at BBC now are being fired. There's a formal investigation going on. The government is heading the investigation. The BBC is in a full-blown crisis. And so Sandy, because I said I think it's A, personally. You're talking about the President of the United States. The insinuation was yesterday, spearheaded by CNN, the New York Times, from the leak of the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, that Trump essentially was diddling an underage girl. He was having sex with an underage girl at Jeffrey Epstein's home. And of course, it turns out to have been a massive lie, and they were exposed and caught peddling this massive lie. So to me, my argument is, well, if I was voting, I would say, hey, why? Because I don't think there's anything worse than pedophilia. And that's what they're trying to smear the president now with. Sandy writes, well, yeah, it's maybe a worse crime, i.e., implying that the president is a pedophile. But she writes to me, look at who's doing it. The BBC is a revered, formally trusted media outlet, and the other is an unhinged political party. Doesn't that mean that the BBC scandal is worse? Well, that's why you can go either way on this. But I can just tell you this. I mean, it's not the New York Times in this country for the left, for liberals, the equivalent of the BBC in Britain. I mean, the BBC has always been known as a very left-wing or liberal media organization. Now, they were thought to be respectable, accurate, for all their biases, serious, and now they're just cheap propagandists who literally are doctoring quotes. They just doctored the quote. It's completely what they've done is completely indefensible. But what the New York Times did, as far as I'm concerned, is just as bad. They took an email given to them by the Democrat Party, by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, an Epstein email to Ghislaine Maxwell of all people, and it says unnamed victim or victim number one spent hours at Epstein's house with Trump. And they took that and they ran wild with it. Basically, pretty much accusing the president of having sex with one of the underage sex victims of Epstein, knowing full well that the name that they redacted was Virginia Giuffre. And as I've said repeatedly now, I don't want to be a broken record, who under oath said Trump did nothing wrong, who repeatedly has said Trump did nothing wrong, who wrote in her book that Trump did nothing wrong. Now, the Democrats know that Virginia Giuffre said Trump is innocent. And the media knows that Virginia Giuffre said Trump is completely innocent. So they knowingly pushed a story that was defamatory, that was a lie, in order to smear, villainize, demonize, and ultimately destroy Trump. Now, look, we're not even talking about they're implying that he's having sex with another woman, he's being unfaithful to his wife. Honestly, they're not even implying that he's being serviced by an intern, say, a la Bill Clinton in the Oval Office. Bad as that is. They're saying he's a pedophile. They're saying he was sleeping with a 16-year-old girl. Like, wink, wink. They were alone in Epstein's house. Just the two of them for hours. Wink, wink. How does the media come back from this? The only difference that I see, to be honest, is that the people of Great Britain are not as cynical and jaded as we are. This is a massive media scandal. This should knock out the New York Times. This should knock out CNN. This should knock out the Associated Press. This should knock out NBC, ABC, CBS News. They should be done. MSNBC, I mean, the filth that they were putting out yesterday based on this bogus report. Never mind the Democrats. That goes without saying. If I'm President Trump, I'm telling you right now, you're going to become, if his people are listening, please, you got to listen to me on this. You're going to win your $1 billion lawsuit against the BBC. My advice now is you do another $1 billion lawsuit. This time against the New York Times, against CNN, against, all the big networks. Everybody who carried this dreck, this garbage, this crap. This is stuff now, we're talking, this is gutter journalism. You're going to be you're already a multi-billionaire. Well, now you're going to make several more $1 billion. You go ahead with this lawsuit, I'm telling you, they're finished, they're done. All you got to do is keep saying, I'm a pedophile, that's what you alleged, that's what you insinuated. You give me a retraction, a formal retraction, or I'm telling you, you're going out of business. Like, enough is enough. Am I wrong? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, now, I want to ask all of you this, on top of everything else. Should Trump sue? Should we have a libel law or laws on the books that hold the media accountable when they deliberately lie and smear and malign someone by putting out blatantly false information that they know to be false, like what they did yesterday regarding Epstein and Trump? Now, I want to ask a different question as well, on top of all this. Is there anyone in the liberal media that you trust? Is there any liberal newspaper, any liberal news site, any liberal media outlet, any liberal journalist, any liberal pundit? Is there anyone where you say, okay, I disagree with them, but they're not propagandists. They're not Bill and Sudbury. They're not just lying hacks who are unhinged and deranged because of their hatred for Trump. Is there anything out there in the media that you see positive or that you like or that you even read on a regular basis? I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. Anthony in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Anthony, and welcome.
Well, Jeff, thank you for having me, as always. But I think that you're wrong on the poll question.
Because...
Anthony, can you hang on for, again, you sound, this is not you, this is on our end. I believe this is our computer. You sound like a robot, like from Star Wars, C-3PO or R2-D2. So I want you to sound like a human being. Anthony, did we fix the problem, Mike? Anthony, can you just continue talking? Anthony?
Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yes. Okay. You sound like a person again. So you think I'm wrong on the poll question, which is fine. Obviously, you're entitled to your opinion, Anthony. Please, why? Go ahead.
Because I give you hundreds of cases every year for the last 50 years of people being caught having sex with underage people. How many cases through our history as a country can you pin, and you said a riot, but that's not what they're calling it, an insurrection on a president? So I think that an insurrection caused by a president is far worse than being accused of being a pedophile. He was supposedly using his right-wing shock troops to overthrow a government. That doesn't happen every day, Jeff. That doesn't. And the fact that the BBC used AI to cut and selectively put out a message, that convinces both right-leaning and left-leaning people that the president was causing an insurrection. But getting back to the topic of the day, which is the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Anthony, can you do me a favor? I'm up against a break. I promise I'm going to come back to you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, we're going to go right back to Anthony in New Hampshire. Anthony, I just want to read this text because I think it sets you up for your second point really well. And by the way, you can text the Kuhner Man. 70470. This is from 617. Jeff, Dems need another distraction. So they're pushing the Epstein hoax with, and this is all in caps, zero evidence. Trump never did this. There are no witnesses, no documents, not a shred of proof. It's the same MO. Invent a narrative, and then fake news runs with it. They can't win on the issues. Can't say this out loud. Basically, let me clean it up. F them. So there, F them. Okay. I hear you, 617. Anthony, so you were saying you think that what the BBC did was worse because they're accusing Trump of, spearheading and leading an insurrection. And pedophilia has been with us for a very long time and many people are engaged in it. So the accusation that a president would actually, lead a violent attack on the Capitol, you're saying is even worse. It's a worse media scandal, a worse lie than what the media are now saying about Trump and Epstein. And you want to talk about the Epstein scandal? Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, Jeff, they manufactured evidence, the BBC did, and they used Trump's own words to do it. Whereas, just like you just said, there's no proof of Trump. So people get accused, like I said, all the time, and some of those people are proven innocent, just like we're proving that Trump is innocent now. But getting back to the topic of the day, what's much worse than what the Democrats have done, Bill and Sudbury? There's pictures of Bill Clinton being massaged by Virginia Giuffre in an airport. There's evidence, hard evidence, of him being on the flight logs going to the island over 26 different times. And this all came out years ago. And who was the special guest honored speaker at the 2024 convention for Kamala Harris? None other than Bill Clinton himself. So your party's got a big problem.
Anthony, do you think this Epstein hoax, is it going to have legs the way the Russia hoax did? Both were fake. Both were false. Both were narratives pushed by, lies pushed by the media. And the Russia hoax damaged Trump a lot, at least for the first half of his presidency. Do you think it's going to have the same effect, or do you think the American people now are on to what the media is all about?
Jeff, the American people are on to what they're doing with the Epstein files. The Democrats aren't, because they're using the tool of the scandal. The difference between the Russia hoax and the insurrection is that there's actual people that came forward that stated under oath that this is what's happened. You had the CIA testify, you had the FBI testify that Russiagate was true, and that there was all this evidence that we never got presented, but you had supposed people, even in the Senate, like Shifty Schiff himself, the pencil neck geek, coming forward and saying, I got all this proof. I have it. You can't see it because it's classified. But they had evidence, allegedly. We all know that they don't have evidence on Trump on this Epstein stuff, or else they would have already used it against him, because they've done everything else to manufacture these things. Why wouldn't they have manufactured the proof when they had the proof on a sex scandal? That's why Bill in Sudbury is choking on his own comments, because he can't prove anything. He has nothing. He doesn't have anybody coming forward in the government saying, "Oh, I read this, and it said for sure that Trump did this," because they know damn well they're going to get their butts sued.
Anthony, drop the mic. I mean, really, drop the mic. You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. There is no proof. There are no witnesses. There's not a shred of documentation. There's not a scintilla of evidence. And they know it. And I'm telling you, it's not working. It's already blown up in their face. Anthony, thank you so much for that call. Bill in Walpole, thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me. I wanted to call and keep on focus, and with all the different callers you had today, they've been very, very on target. I'm not going to try to answer your poll question because I want to get this out. I was out in the West for 5 weeks, and I was with some people who are dear. I even had you on out there on my telephone every day. Didn't want to miss you. This fellow that I was visiting said to me in almost like a parting shot, "You know, Bill, we only believe the news that comes from ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and MSNBC." And I went, "You know what? Until we can change the way they give the news to these people, we can't do anything." Really, that's just my take on it. We can't destroy those medias. We have to make sure they start giving true news. And I think there was something you mentioned earlier in your show, not today, that there was a bill. It was Johnson something or other bill that was taken off by what was either Clinton or Obama earlier. It was put on to give the truth in media. And it was supposed to be put back on the books.
That's right. Yeah, it's called the Smith-Mundt Act. M-U-N-D as in Donald, T as in Thomas. The Smith-Mundt Act. And it literally made propaganda, the media spewing or expressing propaganda, a crime. They would lose their license. They would not be able to stay on the air or be able to be a newspaper or whatever. They would no longer, it's barred. It would be banned. And Obama rescinded and revoked the Smith-Mundt Act. And one of the things, it's not just me, others we're putting as much pressure as we can on the president to restore the Smith-Mundt Act. And I think that would go a long way towards reining in the fake news media. But, Bill, and I promise I'll let you finish your point. I think part of what's happening is, maybe your liberal friends are like, "Oh, we believe the mainstream media." The mainstream media is dying. And I don't just mean because the country doesn't believe them anymore. I mean, they're literally financially dying. CNN now has only 300,000 listeners. I'm not trying to brag. I just want to give you an example. We have several million people who listen to this show, every show, streaming numbers across the entire country. So when I see someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm just going to give that as an example, where she's running to do an interview on CNN, I ask myself two questions. Why are you running to the enemy that have done everything in their power, specifically to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but to MAGA in general, to destroy you, to insult you, to delegitimize you, to completely and utterly discredit you? Why do you run to them? I don't know. Is there something sadomasochistic? Like, why would you? Because by going on their programs, by going on CNN, you're giving them a legitimacy that they don't deserve. And the second point is, you're going now on a network that has 1/10, in this case, you listen to me, you view them, but they have a viewership, 1/10, a listenership, 1/10 of I'm just giving you example, my show. Now, you look at whatever you think of these podcasters, whether you like them or not. Tucker Carlson has almost 20 million. Megyn Kelly, almost 20 million. Joe Rogan, almost 20 million. I'm not saying you should listen to them. What I'm saying is you're talking about podcasters, the new media, whose reach, whose audience is literally 10, 15, 20 times bigger than, say, a CNN or an MSNBC or even the nightly news. So they're like the dinosaur media. They're dying. And this is their problem, Bill. They're in a catch-22. The only people now that watch them are diehard left-wing anti-Trumpers. That's not just MSNBC. That's CNN. That's ABC News, CBS News, NBC News. Now, they're so intolerant. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear both sides. They don't want to hear what's really happening. All they want to hear is Trump evil, MAGA evil, Republicans evil, wash, rinse, repeat. And so the editors know that. Their sponsors know that. Their reporters know that. So all they have to do is just say, look, we got to feed our customers. So, okay, the Epstein, well, we know it's a hoax. Feed it to him. Because they want to believe he's a pedophile. So feed it to him. But it's a lie. Feed it to him. Now, yes, it's keeping their customers happy. But every day they lose more customers. Because like now, it's everywhere. They lied. They lied. They deliberately redacted Virginia Giuffre's name. And now they're like, well, no, Trump had nothing to do with her. She even said it. He had nothing to do with her. So you see, their credibility keeps going down. It's like a doom loop. They can't pull out of it. That's their problem. Now, give it about another 3-5 years. They're done. CNN is going to go from 300,000 to 250 to 200 to 150 to 100, and you're done. MSNBC, their morning show, which is supposed to be I'm just being honest with you, the morning show carries your entire station, whether it's TV or radio. The morning show is what they call the boat that lifts the boat that lifts all tides. Okay, the tide that lifts all boats. Forgive me. So the morning show is the anchor. Morning Joe Scarborough with that clown Mika Brzezinski, they're under 70,000 viewers. Do you know what 70,000 viewers is in TV? You give away the advertising for free. I'm not kidding. That means you're so low that advertisers won't even pay. So you just give it away for free. Now, they keep subsidizing it because they want to use it as a tool to go after Republicans. But after a while, it's a money-losing enterprise. So they're going bankrupt. They're like the dinosaurs. They're dying out. That's why I think they know they're in trouble. They know they're in big trouble, Bill. And that's why they fear us. And that's why now the Democrats and the left have embraced censorship, cancel culture. They have to. They have to suppress the truth because the truth is their mortal enemy. Final word to you, Bill.
Yes. Well, I guess I don't really have much final word after that. I think you hit every point that I was going to talk about. My father was a former POW. He talked about the things they did in Germany to tell the public there during the war that they never even mentioned about the murder of the Jews and all the death camps. The American allies were told to bring all of the Germans up to the camps and show them places like Auschwitz, and they otherwise would never have believed it. When I finished hearing my father say that, I said, isn't it nice? I was like 5 or 6 or 7. Isn't it nice we can trust our forms of news? And he lambasted me up one side and down the other. He said, you believe none of what you hear, half of what you see, and you go and he didn't say vet your news. He said screen your news and find someone of note, listen to them, and then go see how it's reported. Now, at the time, I got all kinds of things I could say about how much work that would have been and all. I won't get into that. But what he basically said, that's the only way you're going to tell whether the news sources are right. Basically, in a nutshell, 2016, I went through that process. I was not a Trump hater, but I certainly didn't love him. But I went to a Trump rally up in Manchester, my first one. And when I got there, expecting 400 to 600 people there, the building was rocked 4 times with people. You know how big the Manchester building is up there. There was 11,000 people inside and 4,000 outside. That's my first lie that I uncovered. People have to go and see it for themselves, the ones that aren't believing it. And we want to not make this country divided. So when I tell people, actually, like people like Bill in Sudbury there, I don't even talk to him. I mean, I would say make sure. I don't blame you for the way you feel because you're getting your news somewhere else and you're being victimized. Go and study and figure out how to find your news sources and believe them. I'm going to end.
Well, Bill, look, you're an independent man. You're an independent thinker. You're obviously a citizen, a patriot, and that's how you'd look and judge everything. And that's the way I think everybody should. Where I would just slightly, respectfully disagree with you, and I think overall I'm with you all the way, is you say, well, you know, even the liberals are being victimized. And you're half right. I don't think they even realize it because they're being brainwashed. They're being constantly indoctrinated and brainwashed. The problem now is that they're becoming so rabid, so intolerant, so hateful that we're becoming their victims. And thank you for that call, Bill. And we'll say, Jeff, what do you mean by that? They're starting now to embrace violence. There's no question now. They cheered on the 2 attempted assassinations of Trump. They cheered on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're seeing poll after poll after poll where now by majorities, Democrats openly tell pollsters they want to kill their political opponents. They they elected Jay Jones to be the state attorney general in Virginia, even though repeatedly he said he fantasized, he had homicidal fantasies about murdering Republicans, 2 bullets to the head, and then killing their children in the arms of their mother. And he was supported by not just the eventual now governor of Virginia, but by the entire National Democratic Party. Now, forget that, because you're going to say, well, Jeff, they hate conservatives, they hate Republicans, but they don't hate fellow Democrats. Okay, listen now to this. One of the senators that voted to reopen the government on the Democrat side was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. As you know, he suffered a stroke, a debilitating stroke. In fact, he basically couldn't communicate. He was incommunicado, could barely utter 2 words. He was debilitated for at least a couple of years, and they still elected him in Pennsylvania. Because he crossed the aisle, along with 7 others, to join with Republicans to end this disastrous shutdown. And also because he has occasionally, and I mean occasionally, disagreed with his party on Hamas. He doesn't like Hamas. He condemns anti-Semitism. He tends to side with Israel in the conflict with Hamas. That's pretty much it. And the shutdown. Other than that, he's a conventional liberal Democrat. I want you to listen to him now. He goes on CNN with Dana Bash. And he's got a book out, a memoir, where he says that the people who are most venomous that attack him are not conservatives. He goes, the worst people who viciously slander me and threaten me and my family, they don't come from the right. They come from the radical left. Roll cut 20, Mike.
As a connoisseur, I can confirm that the most poisonous, the bitterest, is from the far left. That is pretty remarkable to hear you say that as an elected Democrat. Why?
You know, it's just been my personal experience on this thing. And when I asked my digital team, I said, you know, we're on all the platforms. You know, really, what's kind of the harshest? What's kind of the most personal? And the answer was immediate. He said, "Oh, Blue Sky."
So Blue Sky is the Democrats' or liberal version of Truth Social, and it's a hate. I mean, it's a hate social media platform. Listen now to Fetterman telling Dana Bash, "You want to know what they say about me on Blue Sky and in other liberal chat rooms?" Roll cut 21, Mike.
And the difference is, I mean, the right would say really rough things and names. You know, some names I won't repeat on TV, but the on the left it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke, or that's terrible that depression won. Why couldn't it depression won? And I hope your kids find you. I mean, they even have like the graphic a GIF where they have like a stroke, in your head, cheering at that.
They're wishing him dead in the most sick, morbid ways imaginable. I hope your kids find you dead. And this is coming allegedly from his own left-wing allies. So what I'm saying is they're so programmed now with hate that now they're wishing death on fellow Democrats who don't toe the line. By the way, this is what happened during the French Revolution. It's what happened during the Bolshevik Revolution. They eventually turn on their own. They start to devour one another. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. Okay, let me just play one more cut. This is Senator John Fetterman, again, Democrat, really a liberal Democrat, except, he's semi-sane. No, you don't keep the shutdown going forever. What are you people, crazy? No, you should not be calling for Israel to be wiped off the face of the earth. No, I don't want to have anti-Semites in my party. So, that's it. That's where he bucks the trend against his own party. Now, for this, the radical left now is not only calling for him to be primary, they don't just want him purged from the party, but as he's telling Dana Bash in his, from his upcoming book, his memoir, he says, the right, they play rough. Sure, they call me names, they attack me, but they never wish me dead. They're not calling me to off myself. They're not calling for me to be murdered. But my God, from the radical left, he goes, where are these people getting all this hate from? So listen now to Fetterman saying, let me just give you another example of the kind of hate that I get from the left on a regular basis. Roll cut 22, a mic.
I remember one, they claimed, the doctor let us down, and why did they have to save his life? Just really, I just can't imagine. People are wishing, I wish he dies, or I want him to die, literally cheering for a stroke. And I don't know what the kind of a place where that comes from. That's much different than just calling me a name. That's really been consistent, in that community online.
Welcome to the club, because that's what the left does to me all the time. They attack, they could call for me to be dead. They call for my wife, my children. I don't even want to tell you the vile stuff they say about my kids and what they want to do to my kids and have me watch them do it. Okay? That's the Bills in Sudbury and people like him who email me, text me. And exactly where I'm with Fetterman on this. Where does this come from? Well, I think a part of the answer is the media. I think there's no question. The nonstop hatred, the vilification, the indoctrination, the brainwashing, the lying, the propaganda. And it's hour after hour, day after day after day after day. Really what they're doing is, again, I'm sorry, but I have to go back to the Nazis. It's the way the Jews were delegitimized and dehumanized as people. That's what they're actually doing to Trump and to all of his supporters. It's a systematic campaign of dehumanization. And it gets to the point where, like, I hate you. I want you to die. To the point now that if you say, let's reopen the government, you know, you're a loyal Democrat soldier. And by the way, quite a progressive Democrat. But, you know, come on, this is 43 days now. The planes are about to fall out of the sky, for God's sake. People aren't going to get their food stamps. You're going to see mass hunger in the United States. Like, are you guys crazy? Like, just reopen the damn thing. Now he's seen as a, quote, collaborator. And they want him dead. So you've unleashed a Frankenstein's monster I don't think you can control anymore. And that's why, that's my only slight disagreement with Bill. Where Bill, I thought he was excellent. I agreed with him like 99.9%, the previous caller. But he said, well, I think many liberals are victims. Yeah, in a way, sure. Because they're being lied to and brainwashed. But I'm telling you, we're now becoming their victims. Because of the hatred that the media is now deliberately unleashing. Agree, disagree. See, and that's, by the way, that's why they have to push that Trump's a pedophile. Even though it's completely false. And they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So even if the story is debunked, they don't matter. The Bills in Sudbury, oh no, he must have diddled some kid. He must have diddled some underage girl. And then it's, how can you support a pedophile? How can you support this rapist? How can you support this man who had a sexual predator who hung out with Epstein and was having sex with underage girls? So he's a monster, and by extension, you're a monster. See, that's why it's a cancer. It's insidious. So they don't just end up hating the president. They end up hating anyone who voted for or supports the president. John in Dunstable. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure, John.
Jeff, the reason the media gets away with doing what it does, there's never anything done to the communists spewing its propaganda. Now, we had a president in the White House that sold our country out. It's factual, Jeff. A blind man can see it because we got the laptop. We've got his son's laptop. And besides what's on the laptop, there's been a lot more. Why no arrest? What's being done? Well, what is being done? Ilhan Omar, Jeff, while she was married her brother to get citizenship. Why is she still in office? AOC is worth in excess of $30 million. She came in with pennies in her pocket. Where'd all the money come from, Jeff? It's the corruption, Jeff. And nothing is being done about it. Nothing's being done to the media. Now, President Trump put a lot of fires out in the Middle East. But in my opinion, Jeff, it's getting worse in our country. The reason being is the Muslims are taking over, Jeff. You just said earlier this morning that there's a radical Muslim that's got to be taken office in Seattle.
No, not a Muslim. She's a communist. She's not a Muslim. Her name is Katie Wilson. She's a Mamdani leftist. She's not an Islamo-communist. Leave out the Islamo part, but she's a down-the-line communist. John, do me a favor. I'm up against a hard break. I'm going to come back to you. I think I know where you're going with this, and I think it's a fascinating point. So we're going to come back to John. I promise, take more of your calls. Don't touch that dial. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let's go right back to John in Dunstable. John, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were basically making the point Our country is tearing each other apart. We're at each other's throats. Communists now are being elected in New York City. Another one just got elected in Seattle. The Democratic Party is becoming more radicalized and, frankly, anti-American by the second. You have Muslims and jihadists and Islamists pouring into the United States under Biden and now starting to flex their political muscles. We've got serious, serious problems here at home. It's time for the president. Let's forget about the Middle East for now. Let's forget about Ukraine for now. Let's forget about all these other conflicts around the world. We've got a political rebellion on our hands that we need to deal with. Did I sum up your position accurately, John?
Absolutely, Jeff. That's exactly what's happening. The only thing that I would add to that, Jeff, is the media is doing what it's doing because it's scrambling people's minds. This is how you get people to go every which way but straight. Is that they're spewing all this crap, so no one's going to know what's going on, while what is going on is our country is being destroyed. That is what they've been trying to do for years, Jeff, is destroy our country. Take the white man out and put in who I don't know. They're going to have a mixed bag of I guess everything, which is what's here really, anyways. But they don't like us. Remember back, Jeff, Biden, Clinton, and the whole lot of them were talking, and they were dead serious about putting Republicans, especially MAGA Republicans, in concentration camps. I mean, who says stuff like that, Jeff? But communists, Nazis. So this is where we're going, Jeff. It is not getting better. It's getting worse. And President Trump, an associate of President Trump, who's ever listening, stop bringing serious president, entertaining serious president. Put your ballroom on the back burner and start making arrests. Start arresting these communists that are destroying the United States of America, the country that a lot of people died fighting for, and a lot of people's heads and arms and their brains are jello. They lost limbs to fight for the United States of America, not to lose it to these brainwashed communists. Another thing, Jeff, I thought Antifa was a terrorist organization. How come they were protesting? I think it was yesterday. I seen him protesting, fighting.
You're dead on. Oh, you're dead on. No, John, look, that's exactly the question I asked out in UC California, Berkeley, where apparently they beat up a conservative. In fact, a Christian. One of these Antifa thugs literally beat up, and this man is a true Christian. He doesn't believe in violence of any kind, so he wouldn't defend himself. And it was at a big Turning Point USA event, Charlie Kirk's, the late Charlie Kirk's organization. And Antifa showed up in big numbers. They were harassing everybody that was going in to listen to the people that were talking inside. And one of these Antifa thugs beat the hell out of a guy who had a Freedom T-shirt on. He happens to be a very devout Christian. And, I mean, what was it? Punched him in the face 15 times? Did you see the blood all over the man's face? It was a vicious, savage beating, all caught on camera. And the question I'm asking is, they're all self-avowed Antifa terrorists. They're all telling you they're Antifa. Well, that's a domestic terrorist organization. Trump has now designated them a domestic terrorist organization. Why aren't you handcuffing them, arresting them, and throwing them in a police truck? Like, hello? Again, I'm like a broken record now. Where's Pam Bondi? Where's FBI Director Kash Patel? Where's Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino? The president has designated Antifa as domestic terrorists. Why aren't they being locked up and arrested? Break them up, cell by cell by cell. Like, what are you guys waiting for? What's the point of having the vast power and so many law enforcement officials and officers at the DOJ and the FBI if you're not willing to use it? Am I wrong? 617-266-6868. John, thank you for that call. Frank in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Frank, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
Thanks
Frank.
for having me on.
My pleasure, Frank.
I'm a little nervous. I even had a hard time gathering my thoughts with the screen caller, but I'll give it a shot.
You're among friends. There's no reason for you to be nervous. You're among friends. Go ahead, Frank.
Your subjects have changed so fast, but...
well, it's okay. Everything's on the table, so you just talk what you want to talk about.
I called to talk about the poll questions, which they're both very bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the BBC and having Trump, with the Epstein thing. But what really bothers me is, and I love your show. Don't get me wrong, but right on cue comes out the Epstein thing, so that everybody gets their eye off the ball. Nobody's talking about the 43 days of what went on with the Democrats holding up the government and the SNAP benefits and the airlines, and everybody's talking about Epstein. So it's like right on cue, everybody gets their eye off the ball. And I think that's the worst part of it. I really do. That really bothers me. So they tend to succeed every time they come up with something about Trump. They tend to succeed. So,
well,
anyway,
Frank, look, no, if in my opening monologue, I made that very point. I said the reason why they pushed this bogus Epstein hoax with these ridiculous emails that they released yesterday was clearly to distract and deflect from the disaster of the shutdown. And that the Democrats, even now, most of the Democrats are belly aching and crying that they want to keep the government closed. They don't even now, they're saying, no, don't reopen it. I mean, they voted for it, so it's too late now. It passed the House and Trump signed the bill. But what I'm saying is many members of the party are still saying, no, keep it closed. And they want to deflect and distract. There's no question. But this is what they didn't see coming, Frank, is that this time it's not going to be Russiagate 2.0. They're not going to push this for months and months on end. It blew up almost at the launching pad because it came out right away. I got to say, Trump was ready for him. The Republicans were ready. I guess they got wind of it or whatever, because the moment the Democrats released those 3 emails with the redacted name of Virginia Giuffre, the Republicans countered, releasing 20,000 documents and releasing those 3 emails unredacted. And Caroline Leavitt yesterday went on a warpath, and she just tore into the media. And basically she held the email up and saying, here's your unnamed victim. It's Virginia Giuffre, who has said repeatedly that Trump did nothing wrong. So it now has turned into a media scandal because they've been caught red-handed lying, openly lying, deliberately lying. So it's blown up in their face. So if anything now, it's made, whatever little credibility the media had left is now gone. The Democrats are now seen even in a worse light. And to be honest with you, whatever they thought, whatever juice they thought they had in pushing the Epstein files, it's now gone. So, again, it didn't work. And so, look, what Trump should do, my advice, take it for what it's worth, just release the files. Release all of it. Get it out there. It's on. It's there. People can see it. Let's move on. 617-266-6868. Ron in Holliston. Thanks for holding, Ron, and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ron?
Good. I tuned in and I love the discussion because I think it's super relevant right now. But I love the activism and the street theater. And one of the things I wanted to say was I feel that we should have a national demonstration or a protest similar to No Kings, but we call it No Pinkos. And it's just basically patriotism and anti-communism. And maybe somebody like Scott Pressler can copy the No Kings website to get the word out there. But I think it's sorely needed. Like, I think that we need to be visible, that we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it from the left.
Ron, I like the idea a lot. Let me ask you, do you feel that the media in particular is directly to blame? We know the problem with schools, public school system, colleges, universities, how they've really now become in many ways almost Marxist indoctrination camps. So we know that, and we know the role that Hollywood plays, and of course the Democratic Party. But do you think that the media in particular is fueling this sort of slow motion communist takeover of our country? I'm just curious.
I believe that they're a cog in the wheel. Absolutely. I think it's a lot. I think it's even bigger than the media. I think it's international, like these international groups, whatever they are, the World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization. And it's a top down, because you can see that it's all top down with our government during Joe Biden with DEI. And they just forced it down into the corporations, into the schools, into the churches, all over social media, all over legacy mainstream media too, as well. So it's a bundle.
Ron, I have you on. I'm going to play 2 clips, and I want to get your reaction, because now this scandal is getting bigger and bigger regarding the BBC. So it's now come out that even in Australia, ABC News in Australia literally did the exact same thing that the BBC did. So this is the BBC telling their viewers that Trump openly called for an insurrection, for an attack on the Capitol. And they did this by editing out key parts of what he said on January 6th. And they did it so smoothly and so well that as you're watching this, you're like, oh my God, he's calling for an insurrection. Listen now to how they doctored the video. Roll cut 17, Mike.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
Okay? So you watch this and you're like, my God, hang 'em high. This guy called for a riot. But here's the unedited part. Roll cut 17A, Mike.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Okay, and then later, if you remember, he then says, peacefully and patriotically, we're going to have our voices be heard. And he says, come on, we're going to fight like hell. In other words, to get the senators and the members of Congress to speak out against the voter fraud. So they literally edited out the key parts of what Trump said to make it seem that he said the very opposite of what he actually said. And now it's come out, Ron, that in Australia, ABC News did the exact same freaking thing there. Yeah, and forgive me, I thought it was ABC News. Forgive me. It was ABC Australia. That's kind of like their version of the BBC. My bad. It's the Australia Broadcasting Company. So basically, Australia's version of the BBC. Yeah, ABC, Australia Broadcasting Company. And so they did the exact same thing that the BBC did. So to your point, this is international. It's not just here in the United States. Ron, final word to you.
Yeah, that's all when you can finally identify the propaganda, that's part of the propaganda. And thank God for news outlets like Sky News Australia to counter them. And I think Sky News has a pretty far reach. I mean, we get them here in the United States through YouTube and everything like that. But they might not be as large as the as ABC and the ones doing the doctored clips, or they just have such control over their viewers that they might not need 100 million views when Trump and Elon are on Twitter or something like that. But yeah, I mean.
Oh, look, Ron, you put your finger right on it. It's time for patriotic anti-communists, Americans, to come out and say enough is enough.